Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Carrie JK. Welcome to the webinar where we're going to be talking about the new GigaOm Radar report about data security posture management. Before we get started, a couple of notes. If you've got any technical difficulties, please reach out to the host on the chat. We will be taking questions and we will follow up with those after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, so please look for the recorded webinar on demand along with the GigaOM report after the webinar's over. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to turn this over to Paul from GigaOM, who's going to introduce himself and our guest speaker.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Yeah, if you want to pop the next slide on. That's me. Great. So there's a picture of me and me on camera as well. So yeah, great to be here. Thank you for the invite. You know, it's always nice to present at these kind of things alongside vendors who have impressed me while I've been working through a research project. And are doing things that are innovative and fresh inside of an industry. And just as a brief introduction to me, as you mentioned, I'm an analyst here at GigaOm. I'm responsible for the data security posture management report. And my area of expertise here at GigaOm is data-centric security. So this is kind of security that's built around data. It's not built around a technology. It's not built around a location. It's built around data and understanding the data security regardless of where that data might reside. And just as a little bit of background for me, not only am I an analyst here at GigaOm, I actually contract in. I'm also field CTO for a consultancy firm here in the UK. And I've been working in the IT industry over 30 years, from help desk support through to where I am today, working on strategy around security, infrastructure, cloud migration, data management, etc. So pretty well placed to present a report and write a report in this space. But of course, I'm not doing this on my own at all, because I need some real expertise to help us along. So I'm joined by co-founder and CEO at Normalyze, Amer Deeba. Hi, Amer. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Very good. Great to meet you and online here again, Paul. I'm very excited to do this webinar with you. DSPM is on the rise for the right reasons, because data is everywhere, and everyone is now, we talk to in the security industry, CISOs and security teams and data teams are really trying to figure out how to manage data sprawl, get that visibility and control they've lost when data has kind of sprawled and moved into all these cloud and multi-cloud hybrid environments. So this report is very timely, and I thank you for doing it and doing such a thorough analysis, and excited to discuss the results with you today and have a great dialogue about it.
Yeah, thanks, Amer. And I think actually makes some really interesting points there. And one of the things that I kind of mentioned in my introduction, I'm a CTO, field CTO for a consultancy firm here in the UK. And the reason I think that's useful for, and most of my colleagues at GigaOm actually are similar in that we contract in to do very specific work for GigaOm. And part of the reason I think that's useful is that what it allows us to do is to bring real world experience when we write these reports. So we're not writing these reports from an ivory tower and casting our experience and knowledge on the little people. What we actually bring to these reports when we speak to good folk like yourselves, when we're speaking with vendors who are leading the way in these kind of areas, is that we're bringing real customer challenges and real customer questions to this. And I think that adds some extra value to our reports, and certainly works the other way for me as well, because when I'm speaking to customers, I get to take to those customers the experience of speaking to leaders in the industry, and getting an idea on how they're solving these difficult problems, and some of the strategic direction that the vendors are taking. So great to be invited along to speak with you today, and as I say, interested to explore this kind of topic in a little more detail. So let's set a bit of a picture. So what's driving the need for data security posture management? And I think there's a number of things. Data, as you kind of alluded to there, Amer, is absolutely essential to the modern business. It's critical to the way businesses are operating, businesses are doing work, and it's only going to become more and more important, as we carry out more analytics, we use machine learning, and of course we couldn't do any kind of technical conversation without using the acronym AI, the initials AI. But that is having a big impact on organizations. Many organizations are now looking at how they use AI in their business. Think about what Microsoft are doing with Copilot as an example. And and for me, it's absolutely essential that businesses, modern businesses, but all businesses, understand what I like to term as the 5 Ws of data. Where is our data? What data do we have? When is it getting used? Who's using it and why? Because I think without that, it presents some real problems. We can't have, we can't have in the modern business that our data that is unmanaged, uncontrolled, insecure, because it leads to real problems for us as organizations. It introduces unnecessary cost. If we're storing, particularly as we look at migrating more and more data into the cloud, using analytics and learning models against that data, which all come with a cost. And we think about protecting the data and securing it, the more and more data we have, the bigger those costs gets. And if we're keeping data that is of no consequence to us, of no interest to our organizations, we're just paying to store, secure, protect that data unnecessarily. We also find ourselves with governance challenges. More and more of our day-to-day operation with data is heavily regulated. And for some industries, that's an absolute crucial part of what they do. But for all industries, here in the UK and in the EU, GDPR has been a huge driver in the way that businesses change the way they manage and look after data. But obviously, that's being replicated around the globe. Across the US, across Asia, and across other parts of the world. And of course, if we don't know what data we have, and we have data that we shouldn't have, and we have data that's not controlled, it presents massive security risk. Because ultimately for cyber attackers, data tends to be the target, whether it's stealing data, encrypting data so that you can't read it, making it so you can't access your data. It is core to the way modern cyber attackers work. And so DSPM is a hugely important part in solving this. And it's important that we consider this, because actually it makes us a business enabler. DSPM brings us business enablement, because actually without it, if we don't know what information we have, we don't know how we secure it, we don't know where our risks are, how can we effectively use that data in a day-to-day basis to drive our business? So what is it that DSPM brings? I think one of the questions I hear when I talk about this is do I really need yet another tool? Can't I do something with the stuff that I've got? And to an extent, that's kind of true. We've got DLP, we've got data classification tools, we've got access controls, but actually these are all tend to be disparate solutions. And these disparate solutions, I think, present gaps. And I think within those gaps is risk. There's risk to the way that we manage our data and the way we can use it. Amer, have you got any kind of thoughts on that?
So absolutely. I mean, that's why we're still seeing all these breaches happening, and on an every week we hear about a new breach. And the reason I think most of these data breaches are happening, because the existing tools, as you said, have big gaps around data and understanding where the data is, what value is it to the organization, who has access to it, and then combining all the elements around it in order to understand the risk around the data that can lead to breaches. So if you look at CMDB, CSPM tools, CASB, CIM tools, they all kind of help, as you said, from a siloed approach around understanding some risk factor around the data, but that alone doesn't give you the full information that you need in order to connect all these dots in an intelligent way and determine exactly where the important data is, what's at risk, are there any attack paths that can be exploited through an external attacker or an internal attacker that could actually compromise this data and breach it. So, and this is where the SPM, I think, is a game changer, since it's really the application that's going to allow you to bring all the telemetry around the data within your environment, wherever the data is, structured, unstructured, so you can answer the important questions about your data. Where is it? What's in it? How valuable is it? Who has access to it? What are the risk factors around it? And what are the compliance and regulatory challenges that I need to manage on an ongoing basis? And then be able to take all that intelligence and drive continuous remediation around data and a very data-centric approach to solve the problem and solve it at scale, no matter, again, where the data is. And now, if every customer we talk to, the data is everywhere. It's in cloud, it's in SaaS, it's in data lakes that every now is using, like Snowflake and Databricks and many others. And then on premise, it still is a big attack. There's still a big attack and risk factor around it. So you need that kind of comprehensive approach around the data in one dashboard that gives you that visibility that you've never had before. And this is where the SPM is really going to manage that challenge. And as I said, it's a game changer for data security.
Yeah, and I think you make a ton of really good points in there. And actually that kind of whole, it's interesting, isn't it? Because as I look across the security space, not just in terms of data, but as I look across the security space, I'm seeing a real shift actually towards this idea of security posture management. Because that's what DSPM is. It's security posture management for data, and I think that why that's important is because we do have tools that can allow us to secure our data today. We do have tools that can allow us to do a level of classification, but without being able to bring those things together in kind of a cohesive way for our organization so that we can properly understand where the risk is, it's very difficult for us to because data security and data security and data security controls aren't just about technology. They're about understanding risk. They're about process and policy. And actually, if you don't have this kind of overall view of the way that we're managing our data, it's really, really difficult to build those things effectively. And that's what DSPM, I think, starts to lead us along the line of. And as you said, Amer, it's a really important and interesting part of the and we, like I say, we're seeing this in other areas. This idea of security posture management, we're seeing this in other areas. But I think organisations are starting to realise that if they don't really know what the current situation is, how on earth are you supposed to secure and protect what you don't really understand to start with? So what is it that we look for? And what was it that we looked for when we did this report in terms of what is it DSPM delivers? Actually, Kerry, if you mind, could just go back a slide slightly. Thank you. And just just give you an idea of the things that we want a DSPM solution to do. Firstly, we need it to be able to discover. We need it to be able to find data, because actually in lots of organizations, I'll talk to organizations about, I'm sure you do as well. We'll have conversations with organizations around, what does your data estate look like? Where is the data? What do you hold? You know what it looks like? And so many cases they have a rough idea, but they don't really know the details. They'll know that they've got data in some areas, maybe they've got it in SharePoint, they've got it in a database, maybe they've got some on premises, but there's a whole bunch of places they don't know where their data is. So actually having tools that are capable of not only discovering the data in the repositories that you know about, but are also capable of automatically discovering, particularly in the cloud, other repositories is a really useful capability. And we need to be able to classify data. We need to be able to understand what data is important, because not all data is equal. We don't want to be spending necessarily time and money building policies, process, applying technology to protect data that actually is not that important to an organization, because all we're doing is adding cost, complexity, and to be honest, probably annoying our users a little bit as well. And we want these kind of insights. We want this kind of classification. We want to be able to know where our data is so that we can build risk reduction, because actually once we know where the risks are, that's when we can start applying the processes and start applying the tools that allow us to start controlling it. Whether that's using data loss prevention, whether that's using, some kind of data controls, anonymization, masking, encryption, but if we don't know all these things, and this is what DSPM does for us, it brings all these things together. So Carrie, actually, if you want to flick to that next slide now. So actually when we looked at this space, so if we've got an idea of why we might want DSPM, and we've got an idea of what we want from DSPM, what is it that we as analysts look for when we review a space? So when we do our radar reports, there's kind of three areas that we look at. So on the left hand side there, you can see our table stakes. So these are the things that any vendor in this space who is a leading enterprise quality vendor, we expect them to be able to do those things. So if you can't do those things, those vendors aren't included in our report. And then we've got these kind of key features. These are the differentiators really between our vendors. These are the things where we see leading vendors doing these things much better than those vendors that are just good or offering more basic solutions. So these are kind of the important differentiators a lot of the time. And then we've got kind of emerging technologies that we look at as well. So these are the things that aren't necessarily commonplace in organization in vendor solutions today, but they're the things that actually we're seeing customers are asking for, and we expect in the next 12 to 18 months that vendors will have these as increasingly core parts of their solutions. So what we do when we put a report together, we build these kind of things out, and then we evaluate our vendors in that space. So Carrie, if you just want to go on to the next slide. Sorry, go back one. So I was expecting a different slide in there. So yes, so if we talk about in terms of this report, what was it that we that we looked for, and what was it that we saw when we spoke with you guys, in terms of what Normalyze bring to the party, what was it that we saw as you offering a really comprehensive solution, and so if you're watching this webinar and thinking, what is it that I need from a DSPM solution, let me kind of share with you what these guys did really well. So in our report, we categorized Normalyze as a leading and innovative platform in this space. And there's a whole bunch of things that Normalyze do really, really well that are the things that I think you should be looking for in a leading enterprise solution. So one was kind of broad coverage, was the ability to identify data and identify risk in a number of places. And that might be in a SaaS platform, in platforms as a service, in infrastructure as a service, and actually importantly on premises as well. So maybe file shares and databases, because lots of organizations who need to improve their data security still have lots of data sat on premises. It's very easy to think we've moved everything to the cloud, but often in lots of cases we haven't. It's getting that kind of posture assessment. So that idea of having a solution that gives you a view of what your posture is. So that might be against compliance frameworks. It will be identifying where there's potential risk, where you might find potential risk in terms of over access to data, data that's held in the wrong place, sensitive data that's held in over provisioned data stores. So these are important parts. And if you tie in with that as well, kind of compliance, so the ability to look at across the multiple types of regulations that an organization might need to adhere to. It's important that a DSPM tool recognizes those kind of compliance frameworks and can give you a take on how your organization looks in terms of those frameworks. And one of my favorite things that Normalyze give, which I think is a really important part of this, is that kind of clear risk presentation. So one of the things that you guys do that I thought was really interesting was that you can apply a monetary value to risk. We can have debates around how you define that monetary value and and how that compares for each organization individually. But actually that ability to give a kind of a relative view of risk. So actually, if we assign a monetary value to this piece of data over here, and then we assign a monetary value that's 5 times that piece of data, 5 times that over here, well, then we can take a view that actually this data is much more important to present a much bigger risk. And why that monetary value is important, because not everybody who's looking at data security posture management is technical. So when we need to be able to present this stuff back to other parts of our business, actually that kind of clear risk presentation is hugely important. And I think what was another really interesting part about what you guys brought to this market is that idea of detection and response. So it's not only, data security posture management is great up until a point, understanding where the risk is, being able to identify what's at risk and where we might have problems where we're not meeting kind of our compliance requirements is all really useful, but not very useful if we can't do something about it. So actually having tools like Normalyze that can give you really good insight into here's remediation steps you can take, the ability to automate some of this remediation. These are hugely useful capabilities that organizations need in an effective DSPM tool in my case. So they were the kind of things that we look for. There's some examples I think of what you guys do really, really well in that space as well. So Amer, maybe for the audience, it might be really useful to be able to give them a little bit more insight into how you achieve some of those things.
Of course. Thanks, Paul. I mean, what you laid out was just a great blueprint for what kind of the emerging DSPM category is all about, and kind of a comprehensive approach for data security posture management. And from the beginning here at Normalize, I mean, we focus a lot on customer use cases and trying to determine what is really how to capture kind of what customers are trying to accomplish when they're trying to deploy when they're deploying a DSPM platform in order to answer all these questions about their data. And first and foremost is like it's the kind of breadth of coverage, trying to understand data everywhere, structured and unstructured, wherever the data is, across the IaaS, platform as a service, SaaS, and on-prem environment, and do that ability to connect the data into your DSPM solution in an easy and frictionless manner. So we have multiple approaches that allows customer to connect the data in a very secure way and scan the data wherever it is. We never take any data out of your environment, and that's a very important actually aspect, because by if there's if the solution is actually snapshotting data out or taking data out of the environment in order to classify it and scan it and understand what's in it, that creates another risk element. So you really have to make sure when you're selecting a DSPM solution that the data is getting scanned where it is in your environment. If it's in an EU location, it needs to be scanned in that EU location wherever it is and not be taken out into any external source to get it scanned. So we allow customers to connect the data into our environment in a very frictionless manner through various approaches. And then there we kind of analyze the data and scan it, discover it first, then scan it in details through a very patented approach that allows us to scan the data quickly and very accurately using many capabilities, including natural language processing, the checks, and other some AI capabilities also. And then that gives us really a great understanding of what's in that data and classify the data to understand what's really in it and what is the value of that data. And we have an algorithm that allows us to determine that. And it's an estimation of like if that data were to be breached, what is that cost of that breach to you based on previous breaches that has happened before and many researches and reports that we have applied in order to estimate the value of that data. And all that information, we bring it into our powerful back end, including full access and information about the data. And we do that through multiple approaches and leading logs and crowd trails and all type of information in order to determine who has access to the data, what type of access they have, when they've last accessed it. And again, all of that gets combined into our back end, along with information from the environment, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, anything that touches the data in any form or shape that can actually provide a risk element or a risk factor to the data itself. All that information goes into our powerful backend. It's graph-based, and this is where all the intelligence and the analysis happen through. So we run all our signatures in order to determine kind of these attack paths that could lead to sensitive data compromise. And we have hundreds of those attack paths in our backend and our signature library, and that immediately runs after this analysis is completed. And prioritization of these risks happen based on the criticality of these attacks, as well as the value of that data to your organization. And from there, we give you the ability through workflows from within the product to connect this information and take it out in order to drive remediation through existing remediation tools that you're using, workflows tools, SOAR engines, notifications. So all that from the beginning to end, we're helping you answer these questions about your data, the 5 Ws that you pointed out, and then get all that intelligence about the data and make it really actionable and operational within your environment. Beginning to end, you can be up and running depending again on where the data is and how easy it is to connect to it. From half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour, you're really up and running and operational and seeing the value of the product within your environment. Um, and there's a lot of kind of uniqueness to the application. I mean, we have multiple patents on the technology, but the most important thing is how we scan the data in a very accurate, secure, privacy-centric, efficient way from a cost perspective also, and the ability to draw all the information that you need, the risk factors that you need around the data in one place, so you can determine these attack paths that can lead to data breaches that you are not aware of within your environment, and take all that remediation information that we give you about these attack paths, and use it to drive remediation and to implement remediation either in an automated manner or semi-automated manner, depending again on how you want to operationalize the product and the application within your platform. So customers that have operationalized this within their environment, they immediately see results, they see actionable results, and then with so many use cases we have uncovered, understanding where abandoned data is. And that happens through the data discovery process. The data classifications that they get, it's immediately out of the box. There's nothing that you need to train the platform to kind of understand your environment. So we immediately, based on all the entities, that the sensitive entities that we discover out of the box, we give you very accurate data classification, and all of that can be further configured and tuned within your environment if you have very specific entities that are very unique to your IP, to your intellectual property, or to your industry, that can be easily added also. So you get the results, you get basic understanding of where all the sensitive data is and all the data stores, structured and unstructured, within the environment. And then after that, you go into who has access to that data, how they're accessing that data, what type of access roles they have, and when they've last accessed it, should they have access. If I am in the finance group and I'm having access to very sensitive PHI data, should I have access to that data, for example? So all of these, that visibility on access, which is a huge risk factor around the data, is immediately available also after these scans. And from there, you can take action if you want to apply least privilege access to it, or just drive further remediation from there. And then after that, you go to the next use case, which is understanding the risk around the data and understanding any attack paths that can lead to sensitive data compromise. And this is where our patented technology comes into place, where we combine all the elements around the data that we've gathered already, from the sensitivity of the data to access to risk to vulnerabilities to misconfigurations in the environment. We combine them together through our risk engine, and we immediately kind of determine these attack paths that exist within your environment and rate them and prioritize them for you based on criticality of these attacks and the value of the data to you. And that's kind of where you have to immediately look at these, instead of coming in like some of these other tools throw hundreds of alerts at you, or thousands of alerts in certain environments. You look at the 10 or 20 or 15 alerts that are very critical because they lead to a sensitive data breach. And we give you full detailed remediation instructions that are AI generated and completely vetted and by our research team and tested. And that information, you can take it in an automated way through workflows in order to drive remediation with your DevSecOps teams or compliance teams. And lastly, the compliance monitoring, I think, is a huge factor for especially now, when with the latest SEC regulations, and if you have to answer to regulators or you're going through an compliance audit. We have a number of customers actually that deploy us just because they're going through an ISO audit or another audit, and they need to answer these questions about their data with confidence, and they need to do that on an ongoing, continuous basis. It's not like a one-time audit and I'm done. Yes, most of these compliance now mandates requires you that you have continuous controls to understand and answer questions about your data. And this is where I think the SPM can be a game changer, also because it gives you confidence and it allows you to monitor that compliance on an ongoing, continuous basis, not just kind of a one-time snapshot and then you have to go back and redo everything all over again. So one comprehensive platform that gives you the coverage across all your data, that helps you the coverage across the use cases you're trying to accomplish, and to help you connect all the dots around your data in a very intelligent, consistent, continuous, effective way that you've never had before.
So Emma, I mean, just to jump in and to throw Carrie completely because she's not expecting us to have extra comments, but we're going to do it anyway. But I think it's been really interesting what you've kind of covered on these last couple of slides because as you was kind of covering that information, it reminded me of what I really appreciated about what kind of the Normalize platform does. And if you think about the things that I would look for, if I'm looking at DSPM, if you think about there's a couple of areas, that the compliance bit. Actually, if we do this in reverse, almost the compliance bit that you've been talking about, you're absolutely right, is a huge driver for organisations looking at DSPM. But I think organizations, maybe if people are watching this and saying, well, I don't really work in a highly regulated industry, that doesn't remove why DSPM is important because, we still have security risk. And as we said right in the beginning at the introduction, that actually for organizations who are looking to find ways to gain full business benefit and enable their data inside of their organization, you just can't do that if you don't know what the quality of the data is, what the data contains, and whether actually, if you're going to invest in Microsoft Copilot or some other learning model running across the data in your organization, if you're just going to feed into that data that you don't understand and data that you don't know about, the likelihood is that you're not necessarily going to completely waste that investment, but that investment is probably not going to be quite as effective as you might have thought it was. So, I think compliance has been a real driver for investment in tools around DSPM. But I think actually kind of this increased demand for analytics and generative AI inside of businesses, is going to be kind of a huge next driver for these. And actually having comprehensive platforms like this that can discover data and discover risk across a broad spectrum of data repositories. And I can't underline enough how important it is to be able to look across all of your data when you do this, not just the stuff in the cloud, but stuff in cloud, stuff in SaaS apps, stuff on premises, and be able to get an accurate view of the kind of data you've got, where the risk is and how you can better manage it. I love that stuff you're talking about remediation and automating some of that remediation as well. Being able to do that whole end-to-end workflow is really, really important. So, I think it's great what you've shared, Amer. I think it's really interesting. Plays really well against kind of the things that we looked for, which is why you guys scored as well as you did in our report and came out as one of our leaders in the industry. But it's because you do the key things that we think DSPM requires. You do it really, really well. So yeah, I just kind of thought that was a useful place to sum up. And Carrie, sorry I threw your entire
No.
script there at the end.
No, that was
Yeah,
that was a
just to
that
add
was a great
quickly,
point.
just to add the
Yeah.
AI use case, by the way, I mean, and readiness for AI, and I think the SPM is a huge enabler there because it just gives you before, I mean, classifying the data is a big aspect of that and trying to understand where the sensitive data is within the environment before you start throwing it into these LLM models and AI models that anyone within the organization can come and start using, and data is coming out at them. So by actually applying least understanding where the sensitive data is and applying least privilege access to the data, regardless in what approach you use to do that, really helps you to use that data within AI and LLMs in the right manner. And customers now are just at the cusp of this and starting to understand it and understand the risks that are associated with it. And we hear it again and again what's happening within these organizations. So and really the SPMs can help you get ready, and we're seeing customers deploying it and doing deploying the SPM capabilities to as part of their AI readiness programs, and making that an enabler to help use AI more in a more secure, more effective, and transparent way within the organization.
Perfect.
Um,
Thank you so much. At this point, if anyone has questions, please share them in the chat and we will be following back up with you because we are at time. But a couple of quick things to note. One, we are going to be sending out a copy of the radar report with the recording on demand for you to share with your colleagues. So please be on the lookout for that. And if you have any interest in getting a normalized data security assessment, please reach out to us at www.normalize.ai and use the contact us form to reach out, and we will be in touch to talk about that. And with that, thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, Amer, for this informative webinar, and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks very
you.
much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.